The fork hit the table with a clatter, silencing the hum of Seattle's rain-soaked Thanksgiving. Emily, David Lawrence's daughter, stood, her amber eyes blazing. "You're pathetic, Dad." Ditching Mom over some ancient grudge. The dining room froze. Aunt Clara's wineglass hovered midair. Cousin Mike's mashed potatoes stalled halfway to his mouth. Sarah, David's ex-wife, sat across the table, her face a mask of calculated calm. But David didn't flinch. He didn't shout or hurl the whiskey tumbler in his hand. Instead, he smiled. A slow, chilling smile that made the room feel 10 degrees colder. Reaching under the table, he pulled out a plain manila folder and slid it toward Emily like a dealer revealing an ace. 30 minutes, he said, voice low but sharp enough to cut glass. Pack. Emily scoffed, her arms crossed, expecting another of her father's lectures. The folder sat there, unopened, its weight seeming to press the air from the room. David tapped it once, his gaze locked on her. Open it. The guests, relatives David barely tolerated even when he and Sarah played the part of a happy couple, shifted uncomfortably. Nate, David's old college friend, cleared his throat, trying to defuse the tension. Hey Dave, maybe we should. Open it, David repeated, ignoring him. Emily rolled her eyes, performative and defiant, and flipped the folder open. 2 sheets. The first, a DNA report, clinical and stark, with a single line highlighted in yellow. Probability of paternity, 0%. The second, a printed photo of a man she didn't know, Jason Cole, Phoenix, Arizona, financial consultant. An address and a business card were stapled to the corner. Emily's bravado cracked, her hand trembling just enough for David to notice. What is this? Her voice, usually so steady, quivered. David leaned back, sipping his whiskey. Your destination. Sarah's fork clattered against her plate, her composure slipping like a mask. Her cheeks flushed, not from embarrassment, but from the dawning realization she'd been outmaneuvered. The room was a graveyard of whispers, the turkey cooling, the gravy congealing. Even the dog, usually begging for scraps, slunk under the table. David, Sarah said, her voice tight. This is not the time. He didn't look at her. Didn't need to. He could feel her panic radiating across the table. A predator caught in a trap she hadn't seen coming. 30 minutes, he said again, louder, for the whole room. For everyone. Emily stared at the papers, her defiance crumbling into confusion. You're serious? You're kicking me out over this? She waved the DNA report like it was a bad grade she could argue away. David stood, adjusting his blazer with the calm of a man who'd already won. I'm not kicking you out. I'm giving you freedom. You want her version of reality? He nodded toward Sarah. Go live in it. But not here. Nate tried again, his voice shaky. Dave, come on, let's talk this out. You don't need to. I'm done talking. David cut him off, his tone final. He walked toward the front door, pausing only to glance back at Emily. You've got 28 minutes now. The door swung open, letting in a gust of November air, sharp and cold. He stepped outside, lighting a cigarette he hadn't touched in a decade. The rain pattered on the porch, each drop a countdown. He wasn't here to make peace. He'd come to burn down the illusion, and the fire was just starting. Inside, the silence was deafening. Emily gripped the folder, her knuckles white, staring at the DNA report as if it might rewrite itself. Sarah leaned forward, her voice a forced whisper. Sweetie, he's just upset. This doesn't mean anything. But Emily wasn't listening. Her eyes flicked to the photo of Jason Cole, his smug grin taunting her from the page. She'd always known something didn't add up. Her eyes, that odd amber hue, never matched her parents'. She'd chalked it up to some distant relative, a quirk of genetics. Now, the truth was staring her in the face, and it wasn't just about her. It was about her mother's lies. "Mom," Emily said, her voice barely audible. "Did you know?" Sarah's smile was too quick, too practiced. "Know what? This is nonsense, Em. Your father's spiraling. He's—" "Stop." Emily's voice cut through, sharp and raw. She held up the DNA report. "Did you know?" The room held its breath. Clara set her glass down. Mike looked away, and Nate rubbed his temples, muttering, "This is bad." Sarah opened her mouth, but no words came. For the first time in years, she was cornered, and everyone could see it. David, outside, exhaled a cloud of smoke, watching it curl into the damp air. He didn't need to hear Sarah's excuses. He'd heard them all before, 22 years of them, woven into every birthday, every anniversary, every quiet moment he thought was real. The folder wasn't just a weapon. It was a key, unlocking a truth he'd been too busy, too trusting, to see. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from Nate. "You sure about this? She's still your kid." David didn't reply. He took another drag, the cigarette's ember glowing like a tiny star against the gray Seattle sky. Emily wasn't his by blood, but she'd been his in every way that mattered, until she chose Sarah's lies over him. That choice, more than the DNA, was what cut deepest. Back inside, Emily stood, the folder still in her hands. "You're not answering," she said to Sarah, her voice trembling with something new. Betrayal. "You knew, didn't you?" Sarah reached for her hand, but Emily pulled away. "Emily, listen to me." "No." Emily stepped back, clutching the papers. "I'm done listening." She turned toward the door, her footsteps heavy, each one a question she wasn't ready to answer. The dining room, once warm with the glow of candles and laughter, felt like a stage where the final act had just begun. And David, waiting outside, knew this was only the opening scene. The phone buzzed like a wasp trapped in a jar, ripping David Lawrence from sleep at 2:14 a.m. An unknown number glowed on the screen, insistent, relentless. He pressed play on the voicemail, and a slurred southern drawl slithered through the dark. "David, ever wonder why Emily's eyes don't look a damn thing like yours? They're mine. Sarah called me every time you were in Portland, pal. Funny, right?" David's pulse didn't race. It stopped. The voice was unmistakable. Jason Cole, a ghost from 20 years ago, all smug winks and cheap cologne at Sarah's office parties. Back then, David had dismissed him as a harmless flirt, too busy building a life to notice the cracks. Now, those cracks were gaping, and Jason's words were a crowbar prying them wider. He played the message again, then a third time, each syllable etching itself into his bones. "She's got my eyes." He didn't sleep. He sat on the edge of the bed, the blue glow of the digital clock casting shadows across Emily's childhood photo on the nightstand. Her senior portrait, framed in cedar, stared back. His jawline, his posture, but those eyes. Amber, like burnt honey, not his gray or Sarah's hazel. He'd always shrugged it off, blaming some gray-tant's recessive gene. Now the truth was clawing its way out, and he couldn't unsee it. By dawn, David was in the garage, surrounded by dust and forgotten relics. Christmas lights, a broken stroller, boxes of tax returns. He wasn't looking for nostalgia. He was hunting. Somewhere in this mess was proof, and he found it in a cracked plastic bin under a pile of Sarah's old college sweaters. A leather-bound journal, practical, no lock, just pages marked with sticky tabs. He opened it, the spine creaking like a confession. July 2003. David's in Portland again. Jason was my escape. He listened when David didn't. I don't feel guilty. I feel alive. October 2004. Others were mistakes, fleeting. But Jason's different. Sometimes I wish Emily had his smile. God, that's awful to write, but it's true. David's hands didn't shake. His rage was cold, precise, like the blueprints he drafted for Seattle's skyline. Sarah hadn't just cheated. She'd built a double life, page by page, while he paid mortgages and planned birthday parties. He could have confronted her then, stormed into her pristine downtown condo and shoved the journal in her face. But that was too easy, too messy. David wasn't a man who broke things. He built them, and what he was building now was a reckoning. He dialed Jason's number, the one from the voicemail, at 7:03 a.m. The line rang twice before that same drawl answered. Less drunk, but just as smug. "Well, damn, David. Didn't think you'd call." "Tell me," David said, voice flat. "Everything." Jason laughed, a sound like gravel under boots. "What's there to tell? Sarah was lonely. You were always gone, playing big shot architect. She needed someone real. And Emily? Let's just say she's got my eyes and my luck." David's grip tightened on the phone, but he didn't snap. "You're proud of this?" "Proud?" Jason snorted. "I'm just honest. Sarah never loved you, man. You were her safety net, nothing more." The call ended with a click, David's thumb hovering over the screen. He didn't need more from Jason. The journal was enough, but Jason's taunt lit a fuse. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about insult, 22 years of being played for a fool. He ordered a DNA test that afternoon, $299, 2-day shipping. When Emily came over for her usual Sunday coffee, chatting about her art classes, he played the doting dad. She left her toothbrush in the bathroom as always. He bagged it, sent it to the lab, and told himself he was paranoid. Maybe the test would prove him wrong. Maybe he'd laugh at his own suspicion. The email arrived on a Tuesday, 11:42 a.m., while he sat in his office, a half-finished skyscraper schematic on his screen. Subject: "Your DNA results are ready." He clicked, not bracing himself, not hoping, just knowing. The PDF loaded, and there it was. Probability of paternity, 0%. He didn't gasp or curse. He laughed, a raw, jagged sound that made his assistant knock on the door. "You okay, boss?" "Yeah," David called back, wiping his eyes. "Just Tuesday stuff." The laughter faded, leaving a hollow quiet. 22 years. Every school play, every scraped knee, every late-night talk about her dreams of painting like Basquiat. He'd been there, always, while Sarah smiled and lied, her journal a shrine to her secrets. Emily wasn't his, not by blood. But the worst part? She'd known something was off, those eyes, that nagging mismatch, and chosen to stand by Sarah anyway. David didn't call Sarah, didn't text Emily. He closed the laptop and drove to a hardware store, the kind where nobody asks questions. He bought a small safe, fireproof, unassuming. Into it went the journal, the DNA report, and a USB drive with Jason's voicemail. This wasn't evidence for a fight. It was ammunition for a war. That night, he sat in his study, the Seattle skyline glittering through the window. He poured a whiskey, no ice, and pulled out Emily's old sketchbook from when she was 10. She'd drawn him as a superhero, cape and all, saving her from a dragon. He'd laughed then, hung it on the fridge. Now it felt like a lie he'd told himself. He closed the book, his fingers lingering on the cover. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Nate. "Heard you're digging into something heavy. You sure you want to go there?" David typed a reply, then deleted it. Nate meant well, but he didn't understand. This wasn't about going somewhere. It was about tearing down the walls Sarah had built around his life. The next morning, David called his lawyer, Edward Clifton, a shark in a 3-piece suit. "I need you to look into someone's finances," he said, discreetly. "Name?" Edward asked, pen already scratching. "Sarah Lawrence, my ex-wife." Edward didn't ask why. He didn't need to. "Give me a week." David hung up, his plan taking shape like a building rising from a cleared lot. Sarah thought she'd gotten away with it, her charity galas, her perfect mom act, her lies. But David wasn't the man she'd married, the one too busy to notice. He was awake now, and he saw everything. Outside, the rain kept falling, washing Seattle clean. David stood at the window, whiskey in hand, and let the truth settle. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. And justice, like a good blueprint, took time to get right. David Lawrence stood in his Seattle study. The city's skyline a mosaic of steel and glass beyond the window, reflecting his own resolve. Cold, precise, unbreakable. The journal, DNA report, and Jason Cole's voicemail were locked in a safe, but they burned in his mind like a blueprint he couldn't unsee. Sarah's lies weren't just personal. They were a structure, carefully built to cage him for 22 years. Now he was drafting her downfall, and every line had to be perfect. He didn't rush. Revenge was a child's game, all noise and no lasting damage. David wanted justice, the kind that left no room for Sarah to slither back with her polished smiles and half-truths. He started with the journal, photographing each damning page. July 2003. Jason was my escape. David's too busy to notice. October 2004. I keep secrets because I can. Emily's my shield. He scanned them, saved them to an encrypted drive, and returned the journal to its dusty bin in the garage. Sarah would never know he'd been there. Next, he called Edward Clifton, his lawyer, whose voice was as sharp as his suits. Dig into Sarah's finances, David said. Everything, her charity, her accounts, her trips. I want it clean and airtight. Edward didn't flinch. You got a hunch or proof? Both, David said, thinking of the journal's casual arrogance. Start with her foundation. Bridges for families. She's been sloppy. Sloppy how? Edward pressed. You'll see, David replied, ending the call. He wasn't ready to tip his hand, not even to Edward. Trust was a luxury he could no longer afford. 2 days later, an email arrived from Caitlin, Sarah's old college friend, who'd drifted away after the wedding. Subject: I should have told you years ago. The message was short, apologetic, but its attachments were dynamite. Photos from a 2010 charity event in Miami, Sarah laughing too closely with a man who wasn't David, and receipts from a hotel booked under her maiden name. Another file held screenshots of texts from 2015. Seattle retreat was a blast. Not just the keynote, wink. Caitlin's note ended. She bragged about it. I'm sorry. David's jaw tightened, but he didn't pause. He cross-referenced the dates with Sarah's volunteer trips. She'd always sold as selfless. Miami, Austin, Seattle. Each one lined up with a withdrawal from the foundation's account, labeled event recovery or operational morale. Sloppy indeed. Sarah thought her charm was a fortress. David was about to prove it was a house of cards. He met Nate for coffee at a diner near Pike Place, the air thick with the smell of espresso and fish. Nate, ever the peacemaker, slid into the booth, his brow furrowed. You're scaring me, Dave. Emily told me about Thanksgiving. That folder. What the hell are you doing? Uncovering the truth, David said, stirring his coffee, his tone even. Nate leaned forward, voice low. Truth's one thing, but this? You're gonna torch your family. Emily's caught in the middle. You sure you want her collateral damage? David's spoon paused. Nate wasn't wrong. Emily's face at Thanksgiving, shock, then defiance, haunted him. She'd chosen Sarah, called him pathetic, but she was still the girl who'd drawn him as a superhero, who'd cried in his arms when her first art show flopped. He pushed the thought down. Sarah made her a shield, Nate. Not me. Nate sighed, rubbing his temples. Just don't go nuclear, okay? You're better than that. David didn't answer. Better wasn't the point. Justice was. Back home, he found a letter tucked into the journal, missed in his first sweep. Sarah's handwriting, dated 2005, addressed to Jason. Emily's your legacy, but David will never know. He's too trusting, too predictable. The words hit like a sledgehammer, not for their cruelty but their clarity. This wasn't a mistake or a fling. It was a plan, and Emily was its cornerstone. David's hesitation burned away. He added the letter to his arsenal. He spent nights building a video clinical devastating. No music, no theatrics, just facts. A neutral AI voice narrated. Sarah Lawrence, celebrated philanthropist. But who paid for her secrets? Screenshots of bank transfers flickered across the screen, tied to hotel bookings. Journal entries appeared, her own words damning her. I keep secrets because I can. Caitlin's photos followed, timestamps aligned with Sarah's retreats. The final frame was the letter. David will never know. 8 minutes, unassailable. He showed a draft to Edward, who whistled low. This'll bury her, but it's public dynamite. You sure? David nodded. She buried herself. I'm just lifting the dirt. Edward leaned back, skeptical. Emily's gonna see this. You ready for that? David's jaw clenched. He wasn't ready, not really. But Sarah had left him no choice. She'll survive, he said, more to himself than Edward. She's tougher than she looks. The next morning, he got a text from Emily. Can we talk? I'm sorry about Thanksgiving. He stared at it, thumb hovering over the reply. Part of him wanted to meet her, to explain, to pull her out of Sarah's orbit. But another part, the one forged in betrayal, knew she'd have to face the truth like he had. He typed, not yet, soon, and hit send. He finalized the video that night, uploading it to a burner account. He didn't post it. Not yet. Timing was everything, and David was an architect, not a demolition man. He needed one more piece, Edward's financial report, due tomorrow. If it confirmed what he suspected, Sarah's empire would crumble, and no amount of gala smiles could save her. Outside, Seattle's rain fell harder, drumming on the roof like a metronome. David sat in the dark, the glow of his laptop the only light. The safe hummed with secrets, the video waited in the cloud, and somewhere across town, Sarah slept, oblivious to the trap closing around her. David sipped his whiskey, the glass cold against his palm. This wasn't about breaking her. It was about building a truth she couldn't escape. Seattle's rain lashed the windows of David Lawrence's study, a relentless drumbeat mirroring the pulse of his plan. The video, 8 minutes of Sarah's lies laid bare, was ready, a digital guillotine poised to drop. David hovered over the upload button, his finger steady, but his mind flickered to Emily's face at Thanksgiving, defiant, then broken, clutching the DNA report like a lifeline. He'd built this trap for Sarah, but Emily was caught in its jaws, and that truth gnawed at him. He didn't press send. Not yet. Timing was everything, and Edward Clifton's financial report was still pending. David needed every angle covered, every escape route sealed. Sarah wasn't just a liar. She was a chess player, and he was about to force her into checkmate. His phone buzzed. Edward. Got the report, the lawyer said, voice clipped. It's worse than you thought. Meet me in an hour. David arrived at Edward's office, a sleek fortress of glass in downtown Seattle. The report was a bombshell. Sarah had siphoned thousands from bridges for families, masking personal expenses, hotels, flights, consulting fees, as charity costs. Dates aligned with her journal entries, her retreats with Jason Cole and others. She's been running a shell game, Edward said, sliding the file across his desk. This could end her. It will, David said, his voice low, final. He took the file, its weight a promise. Back home, he added the financial data to the video, each transaction a nail in Sarah's coffin. The AI voice narrated, donations meant for families, spent on secrets. He titled it simply, The Truth About Sarah Lawrence. No theatrics, just facts, her journal, her bank records, Caitlin's photos, the letter to Jason. He scheduled the post for 6 p.m. Thursday, when Seattle's charity crowd would be sipping wine, scrolling their feeds. But Emily's text from yesterday lingered. Can we talk? I'm sorry. David hadn't replied. He wanted to shield her, to explain before the video went live, but doubt stopped him. She'd chosen Sarah once, called him pathetic. Could he trust her now? He typed a response. Meet me tomorrow noon at the diner, then deleted it. The video would speak for him. Thursday came, gray and heavy. David sat in his study, watching the clock tick toward 6 p.m. At 5:58, his phone buzzed, a call from Sarah. He let it ring, her name flashing like a warning. The voicemail came seconds later, her voice tight, panicked. David, whatever you're planning, stop, we can talk. Don't do this to Emily. He deleted it. Too late for talks. At 6 o'clock, the video went live. By 6:30, it had 3,000 views. By midnight, 28,000. Comments flooded in, is this real? She seemed so perfect. What a fraud. Bridges for Families scrubbed Sarah's name from their site within hours. Donors issued statements pulling funds. Her corporate bio vanished. Her email bounced. David watched it unfold, whiskey in hand, feeling not triumph but a strange, quiet clarity. Sarah's empire was ash, and he'd lit the match. Friday morning, Nate called, his voice tense. Jesus, Dave, you did it. It's everywhere. But Emily, she's a wreck. She saw it. David's chest tightened. He'd known she would, but knowing didn't soften the blow. She's coming to see you, Nate added. Be ready. Emily arrived at noon, unannounced, her eyes red, her art school hoodie damp from the rain. She stood in David's doorway, clutching her phone. The video paused on its final frame. Sarah's letter to Jason. Why? She asked, voice raw. Why put it out there for everyone? David stepped aside, letting her in. Because she lied, Emily. To me, to you, to everyone. Truth doesn't stay quiet forever. She sank onto the couch, staring at the floor. I defended her. I thought you were obsessed. But this, she held up her phone, the video still frozen. She used me. That letter. She called me his legacy. David sat across from her, his hands clasped. I didn't want you to see it like this. I tried to warn you. Warn me. Emily's voice cracked, anger flaring. You threw a bomb, Dad. You could have told me first. He leaned forward, voice steady. Would you have listened? The Thanksgiving you chose her. Called me pathetic. I had to show you what she was. Emily's eyes welled, but she didn't look away. I was wrong. Okay. I'm sorry. But this, it's too much. She paused, her voice dropping. Did you ever think about what it'd do to me? David's throat tightened. He had thought about it, every day, every night. But Sarah's lies had left no clean path. I thought about you every step, he said. But she made you her shield. I had to break it. Emily wiped her eyes, nodding slowly. I found something else. In her desk. She pulled a folded paper from her pocket. A note. Sarah's handwriting. Jason, Emily's ours. David's just the backdrop. She slid it across the coffee table. I hate her for this. David stared at the note, his anger reigniting, but he kept it caged. You don't have to hate her, he said. Just see her for what she is. Before Emily could reply, David's phone rang. Edward. We've got a problem, the lawyer said. Sarah's filed a restraining order. Claims you threatened her last week. She's pushing hard, David. Says you're unhinged. David's grip tightened, but his voice stayed calm. She's desperate. I was at dinner with you last week. We've got receipts, cameras, witnesses. Edward chuckled, dry. Thought you'd say that. I'll handle it. But she's not done. Watch your back. David hung up, meeting Emily's gaze. She's fighting back, he said. Lying again. Emily's jaw clenched, a spark of his own resolve in her eyes. Let me help, she said. I know her passwords, her emails. I can prove she's lying. David hesitated. He'd wanted to keep her out of this, to protect the girl who'd drawn him as a hero. But she wasn't that girl anymore. She was a woman choosing her side. Okay, he said finally. But we do this my way. Clean. Legal. She nodded. a faint smile breaking through. Like you taught me, Dad. Always have a plan. Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle, Seattle's skyline sharpening through the mist. David felt the weight of the moment. Emily beside him, the trap closing on Sarah. This wasn't the end, but it was close. Sarah had made her move. Now it was his turn to finish the game. Seattle's skyline shimmered through a rare break in the clouds, its clarity a mirror to David Lawrence's mind. The video had done its work. Sarah's empire of lies was rubble, her charity dissolved, her name erased from gala guest lists. But as David stood in his study, the safe now empty of its secrets, victory felt hollow. Emily's words from yesterday, "I hate her for this," echoed, a reminder that justice had a cost, and she'd paid it too. The restraining order Sarah filed was her last desperate move, a flimsy gambit to paint David as the villain. Edward Clifton dismantled it in court that morning, presenting Uber receipts, restaurant cameras, and Nate's testimony that placed David miles away from Sarah's alleged threats. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with steel-gray hair, dismissed the order with a single word: frivolous. Sarah sat in the courtroom, her tailored blazer crisp but her face drained, eyes darting like a trapped animal's. David didn't meet her gaze. He didn't need to. Her defeat was written in the slump of her shoulders. Edward met him outside the courthouse, rain starting to speckle their coats. "She's done," the lawyer said, lighting a cigarette. "The foundation's under audit. IRS is circling. She's got nothing left." David nodded, pulling his collar against the drizzle. "Good." Edward raised an eyebrow. "You don't sound thrilled." "It's not about thrill," David said, his voice low. "It's about truth." He drove home, the city's hum a distant pulse. His phone buzzed, a text from Emily. "Can I come over? Need to show you something." He replied instantly, doors open. For the first time in weeks, he didn't hesitate. She'd chosen him, not Sarah, and that choice, fragile as it was, felt like a brick laid towards something new. Emily arrived an hour later, her hair damp, a canvas tote slung over her shoulder. She set it on the kitchen counter, pulling out a sketchbook, her old one, from when she was 10, filled with crayon heroes and lopsided suns. "Found this in Mom's storage unit," she said, flipping to a page where she'd drawn David as a caped crusader, saving her from a dragon. "She kept it. Never told me." David's throat tightened. He remembered pinning that drawing to the fridge, Sarah laughing it off as cute. Now it was a relic of a life he'd thought was real. "She kept a lot of things," he said, voice steady but soft. Emily nodded, then pulled out a USB drive. "This too. Her emails. I used her passwords. Don't ask how. There's proof she lied about the restraining order." She emailed her lawyer, admitting it was a stunt to slow you down. She slid the drive across the counter. "Use it. Finish this." David took the drive, his fingers brushing hers. "You sure about this, Em? This is deep water." "I'm sure," she said, her amber eyes, Jason's eyes, but hers now unwavering. "She used me to hurt you. I'm done being her pawn." He studied her, seeing the girl who'd once needed him to chase monsters, now ready to face them herself. "Okay," he said. "We'll do it together. Clean like always." They sat at the kitchen table, the same one where he'd taught her to draw, and uploaded the emails to Edward. Each one was a nail in Sarah's coffin. Her lawyer's advice to play the victim. Her own words. "David's too smart. We need leverage." By nightfall, Edward confirmed the emails were with the prosecutor. Sarah's audit was now a criminal investigation. She'd face charges, not just shame. Emily stayed for dinner, a quiet meal of takeout pizza, the sketchbook open between them. "Remember when you took me to that art gallery?" she asked, picking at a slice. "I was 12, thought I'd be famous by 16. David smiled, the first real one in months. "You were fierce. Still are." She looked down, her voice small. I'm sorry I chose her. I didn't know. He reached across, squeezing her hand. You know now. That's enough. She squeezed back, then pulled out a new sketch. A pencil drawing of Seattle's skyline, sharp and vivid, with a tiny figure on a rooftop, looking out. It's you, she said. Not a hero. Just Dad. David's eyes stung, but he didn't blink. I'll take it. The next morning, a letter arrived from a local foundation, not Sarah's. We'd like you to lead our school rebuild project. Your reputation precedes you. David read it twice, the words a quiet vindication. He'd lost a marriage, a version of his daughter, but he'd gained something else. A chance to build again, not just for himself but for others. He called Nate, who answered with a laugh. Heard you're the talk of the town, man. Sarah's toast and you're getting job offers? Damn, you don't mess around. Never did, David said, glancing at Emily's sketch on his desk. You free this weekend? Could use a beer. Nate chuckled. Name the time. David hung up, then walked to the window. Seattle sprawled below, its scars hidden under new glass and steel. Sarah was out there, alone now, her lies a cage of her own making. He didn't hate her, not anymore. Hate was heavy. Truth was light. He'd carried the first too long. His phone buzzed, one last text from Sarah. You ruined me. He read it, then deleted it. She'd ruined herself, and he'd only held the mirror. Emily's sketch caught his eye again. The tiny figure on the rooftop, free against the skyline. He picked up his keys, ready to meet Edward and close the final chapter. The rain had stopped, and Seattle felt like home again.